A couple of times, Susan almost canceled her trip. She thought about just leaving them alone in their happiness. Could she make that sacrifice for Chris? But then she'd think about how she ached for him and decided she wouldn't give up without at least seeing him one more time. She wanted desperately to tell him how sorry she was and ask for forgiveness. She'd have lots of time on the voyage to think about how she'd approach him and what to say. If nothing else, the girls wanted him back in their lives. 23 years had to count for something. Got to go, Laura. Time to set the sails. I love you, Mom. Be safe. I love you too, Laura. I'll see you soon. Soon, the Lady Diana caught the wind, and all that remained was the soothing sound of wind and water as the boat glided effortlessly through the blue-green waters of the Gulf. Standing in the cockpit, Susan kept the Diana close to the wind, maximizing her speed. For the first time in months, she felt gloriously alive. The rush of exhilaration bubbled over, and she shouted with unrestrained joy, "Come on, Diana. Let's go get our man." The Diana surged forward, responding like the spirited thoroughbred she was, cutting through the waves with purpose. As the Diana approached the small, idyllic hamlet, Susan's grip on the wheel tightened. The sight of the other boat, Teresa's boat, Chris's boat, anchored peacefully near the shore sent a pang through her chest. She slowed her pace, careful not to draw attention, and moored the Diana at a discreet distance. She watched them from afar, her heart caught in a whirlwind of hope and dread. Chris looked different. The man who had once been hers moved with an ease and confidence she hadn't seen in years. His laughter, a sound she once cherished, rang out as he stood beside Teresa, carrying supplies toward the cluster of huts. Teresa was beautiful in an understated way. Her dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, her sun-kissed skin glowing in the warm light of the afternoon. More than her appearance, it was her demeanor that struck Susan. She was calm, composed, and effortlessly warm toward the villagers who greeted her. Susan stayed hidden, watching as Chris and Teresa set up a small clinic under the shade of a sprawling tree. Together, they treated children with fevers, dressed wounds, and distributed medicine. They moved in sync, passing instruments and sharing smiles that told a story Susan wasn't a part of. She wanted to hate Teresa. She wanted to see something cold or calculating in the other woman's mannerisms. But there was nothing. Instead, she saw kindness, compassion, love. And Chris, her Chris, he looked happy. Susan's chest tightened, a mix of emotions she couldn't untangle. This was the man she had betrayed, the man she had pushed away. She convinced herself that finding him would fix everything, that once he saw her, he'd remember what they'd had. But now, watching him laugh as he handed a little girl a lollipop from a weathered backpack, she felt a sinking realization. This wasn't the Chris she'd hurt. This was someone new. Susan sat down on the edge of the Diana, her gaze fixed on the bustling little clinic. What was she even doing here? Could she really bring herself to shatter this fragile, beautiful world he seemed to have built with Teresa? Her fingers brushed against the photograph in her pocket, the one of them from years ago, smiling and carefree. It felt like a lifetime ago. I followed them to the bar that evening, my heart pounding with every step. It was a small, lively place, filled with the sound of laughter, clinking glasses, and a local band playing a cheerful tune. The air was thick with the scent of grilled fish and salty sea breeze. Chris and Teresa sat at a corner table, illuminated by the warm glow of string lights. He looked so alive. His laughter filled the room, deep and genuine, as Teresa leaned in, her eyes sparkling with amusement at something he said. They were relaxed, completely at ease with one another. I stood in the shadows, gripping the edge of a worn wooden post, watching the man who had once been my world light up for someone else. It was unbearable. The way he leaned toward her, the way her hand brushed his arm, and the way their eyes met. It was everything we used to be. Every laugh, every lingering glance was a dagger to my chest, and I couldn't tear my eyes away. I don't know how long I stood there, frozen in place, before they got up and left. My feet moved on their own, following them down a winding path to the beach. The soft crash of waves against the shore should have been calming, but all I felt was a storm raging inside me. And then I saw them. Under the faint silver light of the moon, Chris and Teresa stood close, their silhouettes framed by the endless ocean behind them. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face, his touch so tender it made my breath hitch. She smiled up at him, and before I could prepare myself, he leaned down and kissed her. I thought my heart had broken the day Chris left me. I thought I'd felt the deepest depths of despair when I watched his boat disappear over the horizon. But this was agony. It was like a mirror had been held up to my soul, and in it, I saw Chris's pain reflected back at me. This must have been how he felt when he found out. When I betrayed him, I stumbled back, my chest heaving with the weight of the realization. The ache in my heart wasn't just for losing Chris. It was for what I had done to him, for the pain I had caused and the love I had taken for granted. Tears blurred my vision as I turned away, the sounds of their laughter and the kiss they shared etched into my mind. I made my way back to the Diana, every step heavier than the last. In that moment, I knew I couldn't fix this. No apology, no grand gesture, could undo the damage I had caused. For the first time, I truly understood what I had lost, and why I had no right to ask for it back. As the evening wore on, I sat alone on the Diana, staring out at the dark waves and wrestling with the questions in my mind. Did I truly want Chris to come back to the life we'd had? Or was I just desperate to pull him away from the happiness he'd found, to make him feel the hurt I had felt? Had he really forgotten me? Forgotten us? The thought was unbearable. I needed answers. I needed to know if there was even a sliver of hope left for us. And if there wasn't, I needed to hear it from him, or from her. The decision was made before I even realized it. I slipped a photograph of us into my bag, my hands trembling, and stepped off the Diana. The night air was cool against my skin, but I barely noticed as I walked with determination toward the village, searching for Teresa. I found her by the fire pit outside one of the huts, talking quietly with a villager. Chris was nowhere in sight. My heart thudded painfully in my chest as I approached her, rehearsing the words I needed to say, trying to ignore the sharp stab of jealousy as I watched her laugh softly at something the villager said. She noticed me before I spoke, her warm smile fading into polite curiosity. "Hello," I began, my voice shaking despite my best efforts. "Dr. Delgado, isn't it?" She nodded, her brow furrowing slightly. "Yes. And you are?" I swallowed hard, my throat dry as sandpaper. "My name is Susan. I think we need to talk. It's about Chris." At his name, her expression softened, but there was a flicker of confusion in her eyes. "Chris? Do I know him?" I took a deep breath and reached into my bag, pulling out the photograph. It was a picture of us from years ago, smiling brightly in front of a lighthouse, arms wrapped around each other. My fingers trembled as I handed it to her. "This is Chris," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "He's my husband." Her eyes widened, the shock clear on her face as she stared at the photograph. For a moment, she was silent, her lips parting slightly as if to speak, but no words came. Then, she looked back at me, and I saw the tear glistening in the corner of her eye. "I thought you should know who he is," I continued, my voice wavering. She quickly said, "He lost his memory. That's why he doesn't remember you, or the life you had together." Her fingers tightened around the photograph, and I saw the conflict in her eyes. She was trying to process what I had just told her, trying to reconcile the man she knew with the one in the picture. "I loved him," I whispered, the words spilling out before I could stop them. "I still do. And maybe I don't deserve a second chance after what I did, but I had to tell you the truth. He's my husband and I couldn't finish the sentence. My voice broke, and I looked away, ashamed of the tears that blurred my vision. When I dared to meet her gaze again, she looked like she was holding back her own tears. Her composure, the calm strength she had exuded earlier, was cracking. "He never told me about you." "Maybe because he never remembered," she said softly, her voice trembling. "But if what you're saying is true, then—" She trailed off, clutching the photograph to her chest as if it were a lifeline. I didn't know what else to say. I had done what I came to do, but instead of relief, all I felt was a hollow ache in my chest. I had dropped a bombshell into her world, just as mine had been shattered months ago. As I turned to leave, I glanced back at her one last time. She stood frozen, staring at the photograph, her expression a mixture of heartbreak and uncertainty. And for the first time, I wondered if I had done the right thing, or if I had just spread my pain to someone else. As I spoke to Teresa, the tension in the air was suffocating. The weight of my words, the emotions flickering in her eyes. It was all too much. Then I saw him. Chris walked in, his presence commanding the space, and my heart lurched in my chest. For a split second, I thought he'd look at me, that he'd remember me, that something deep within him would spark and bring back the man I knew. But he didn't. Instead, his eyes went straight to her, Teresa. His concern was palpable, written across his face as he moved to her side, his hand settling on her shoulder protectively. "Teresa," he said gently, his voice low and soothing, "are you okay? What's going on?" She didn't answer immediately. Her gaze flickered to me, then back to him, her hands trembling slightly as she clutched the photograph I'd given her. Chris's eyes followed hers, landing on the picture, and for a moment, something unreadable passed over his face. But then, as if I wasn't even there, he cupped her face in his hands, his thumb brushing away the tear that had slipped down her cheek. "Let's go," he said softly, his focus entirely on her. "Come sit down and tell me what's wrong." He led her away, his arm around her shoulders, guiding her to a bench nearby. I stood frozen, watching as he leaned in, his voice too low for me to hear, his attention fully on Teresa. The love in his eyes, the tenderness, the care. It was a dagger to my heart. That love used to belong to me. Those hands used to hold me like that. That voice used to calm my storms. Now, it was all for her. I stood there, rooted to the spot, trying to hold myself together. A storm of emotions swirled inside me. Anger, heartbreak, jealousy, and desperation. Could I really blame him for moving on? After all, I had been the one to destroy what we had. But a flicker of determination sparked within me. Maybe if I could make him remember, if I could remind him of who he was, who we were, then he'd come back to me. Maybe there was still a chance, however small, to fix what I had broken. Or would he? He'd filed for divorce. That fact clung to me like a shadow, whispering doubts into my mind. Could he forgive me? Would he even want to? I felt the weight of uncertainty pressing down on me. Watching him with Teresa, I couldn't tell if it was hope or despair fueling my thoughts. All I knew was that I couldn't walk away, not yet. Not without knowing if there was anything left of the man who had once been mine. I watched in disbelief as Chris reached for the photograph that Dr. Delgado was holding. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat echoing the turmoil inside me. For a fleeting moment, I wondered if this was my chance. If the truth would finally pierce through his fogged memory and bring him back to me. But instead of a spark of recognition, I saw confusion cloud his eyes. He glanced at the photo, his brow furrowing as he tried to piece together the fragments of his past. Then, without warning, frustration erupted from him like a storm breaking free. He snatched the picture from Teresa's hand and hurled it to the ground, the sound of it hitting the earth sharp and jarring. "Teresa, come back to the boat," he demanded, his voice strained and urgent. Before either of us could react, his knees buckled and he collapsed onto the ground. Panic surged through me. I rushed forward, my legs moving on instinct, ignoring the pounding in my ears and the whirlwind of emotions threatening to overwhelm me. Other villagers quickly gathered around, helping him to a nearby bench and offering him water. I knelt beside him, my hands trembling as I reached out to touch his arm, desperate to anchor him back to reality. Time seemed to slow as I watched him lie there, motionless and silent. My mind raced with questions and fears. What had triggered this sudden collapse? Was it the weight of the revelation? The sight of our past laid bare in that photograph? Minutes felt like hours until his eyes fluttered open, his gaze unfocused and distant. He looked first at Dr. Delgado, confusion and concern etched into his features. Then, as if a veil had been lifted, his eyes met mine. In that instant, a torrent of emotions crashed over me. Hope, fear, regret, and an aching longing that I thought had been buried deep within. He reached out, his hand trembling as he took Teresa's. The gesture was tender, filled with a care that once belonged solely to me. My heart shattered all over again. The sight of him holding her hand like that cutting deeper than any knife could. It was as if witnessing my own pain reflected back at me through his actions. He stood slowly, his movements deliberate yet heavy with exhaustion. Without a word, he turned and began walking towards his boat, his hands still entwined with Teresa's. Every step he took felt like a betrayal, reaffirmation of the life he was building without me. I wanted to call out to him, to make him see me, to remind him of who he was and what we had once shared. But the words caught in my throat, suffocated by the weight of my own guilt and sorrow. As he disappeared into the night, the realization settled over me like a suffocating blanket. He was moving forward, leaving our past, and me behind. The finality of his departure left me hollow, a stark reminder of the irreversible damage my actions had caused. I stood there for a moment longer, watching the ripples he left behind on the water, feeling the same helplessness that Chris must have felt when I betrayed him. Tears welled in my eyes, blurring the view of the dark waters stretching before me. I reached into my pocket, pulling out the photograph once more, my fingers tracing the smiles captured in that fleeting moment of happiness. It was a relic of what was lost, a symbol of the love I had taken for granted and the consequences of my mistakes. In that quiet, painful moment, I understood that some wounds could never be healed, and some bridges, once burned, could never be rebuilt. All I could do now was stand on the deck of the Diana, grappling with the echoes of my past and the stark reality of a future that no longer included Chris. As the night enveloped the village, I felt the weight of my choices pressing down on me, each one a reminder of the love I had destroyed and the life I could never reclaim. The soothing sound of the wind and water, once a source of peace, now seemed to mock me with their relentless rhythm, mirroring the unending cycle of regret and longing that consumed my heart. I sat on the bench near the harbor, staring blankly at the dark waters stretching out before me. My hands trembled as I clutched the photograph to my chest. The image of Chris walking away with Teresa lingered in my mind, an unrelenting ache that gnawed at my heart. I didn't notice her approaching until she was right in front of me, her footsteps light but purposeful. When I looked up, Dr. Teresa Delgado was standing there, calm and composed, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the village lights. "May I sit?" she asked, her tone even, almost clinical. I nodded, unsure of what to expect. My throat was dry, my pulse quickening as she lowered herself onto the bench beside me. She folded her hands neatly in her lap, her demeanor so calm and measured that it sent a shiver of unease through me. "I thought you deserved to know how we found Chris," she began, her voice steady but devoid of any warmth. "And how he ended up here." I swallowed hard, my heart pounding in my chest. I wanted to interrupt, to demand answers, but her presence, her poise, rendered me silent. "Chris was off the coast," she continued, her eyes focused somewhere in the distance. "He was unconscious, severely dehydrated, and malnourished. They brought him to the clinic where I was working at the time. It took weeks for him to recover physically. Mentally." Her voice trailed off, and she paused for a moment, her gaze flickering briefly to meet mine. "He didn't remember anything. Not his name, not his past, not who he was. It was as if his entire identity had been wiped clean. He was a blank slate." I felt a lump form in my throat as her words sank in. The man I had known, the man I had betrayed and wanted so desperately to find again, had been lost completely, not just to me but to himself. "As he recovered, we helped him rebuild," she continued. "We gave him a new name, a new purpose. He became part of our team, and together, we began traveling from place to place, offering medical care to those in need. It gave him a sense of direction, of belonging." Her voice was so calm, so matter-of-fact, it unnerved me. I had expected anger, bitterness, or even sadness, but there was none of that. Her professionalism was a shield, one I couldn't penetrate. "He finally knows who you are, who he is, and he knows you're here," she said after a pause, her gaze steady. "I guess watching you jolted his mind and brought out everything that he had lost, or I should say forgotten. I told him he should meet you. It might be good for him. But I need you to understand something." I tensed, my heart racing. Chris's mind is still fragile. He just came out of his shell. Any sudden stress or emotional upheaval could be harmful to him. If you speak with him, I need you to tread carefully. Don't try to force him to remember. Don't overwhelm him. Her tone wasn't harsh, but it was firm, almost clinical, as if she were explaining a medical procedure rather than addressing the man we both cared about. I nodded slowly, my stomach twisting into knots. Her calmness, her lack of visible emotion, it terrified me. I had walked into this thinking she might be angry, hurt, or defensive. Instead, she was composed, professional, and entirely in control. It made me feel small, out of place, and utterly unprepared. "I only want to help him," I murmured, though the words felt hollow even as I spoke them. Did I want to help him, or did I want to reclaim him? She studied me for a moment, her expression unreadable, then stood. "I've said what I needed to say. He'll come to you when he's ready." With that, she turned and walked away, leaving me sitting there in the dark. I hugged the photograph tighter, my thoughts a swirling storm of fear, regret, and uncertainty. She had handed me a chance, but the way she'd done it, so calmly, so detached, made me question everything. What if he didn't come back to me? What if I pushed too hard and hurt him further? What if I was the one who didn't belong in his life anymore? For the first time since I'd set out to find Chris, I felt truly scared, not of losing him, but of the possibility that I had already lost him forever. This was turning out to be more challenging than I had ever imagined. My heart was a storm, torn between desperation and fear. I had envisioned this moment countless times, the moment I would see Chris again, touch him, hear his voice. I had imagined him looking at me, his eyes softening, maybe even a flicker of love rekindling. But now, as he sat on the bench near me, it felt like I was staring into the void, reaching for someone who was no longer there. He didn't look at me. Not once. His gaze stayed fixed ahead, distant and detached, as though the space between us was filled with walls I couldn't see but could feel in every aching inch of my soul. I longed to reach out, to take his hand and pull him close, to whisper apologies and promises until my voice gave out. I wanted to hold him, to bury my face in his chest and feel his arms around me again. I wanted to kiss him, to erase all the pain with the warmth of my lips against his. But I couldn't move. My sins had rooted me in place, a heavy chain wrapped around my heart, reminding me why I had lost him in the first place. Chris had always been calm, even in the face of my worst mistakes, but this calmness felt different. It wasn't patience or understanding, it was indifference. He sat there like a stranger, someone who didn't owe me anything, someone who had moved on. The look of love I had once taken for granted was gone, lost in time, swept away by my selfishness. How could I blame him? I had destroyed us, shattered the life we'd built together. And now, as I sat mere feet from him, the weight of my actions pressed down on me with crushing force. "Chris," I whispered, my voice trembling, barely audible. He didn't respond. His shoulders remained tense, his jaw set. I wondered what he was feeling. Anger, confusion, nothing at all? The silence between us stretched endlessly, suffocating me. I wanted to scream, to beg him to look at me, to see me, to remember us. But all I could do was sit there, paralyzed by guilt and fear. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and measured. "Why are you here, Susan?" The question cut through me, sharp and cold. There was no warmth in his tone, no curiosity or concern, just the simple, detached query of a man who had already closed the chapter where I existed. Tears welled in my eyes, but I blinked them back. I didn't deserve to cry, not after everything I had put him through. "I came to see you," I admitted, my voice cracking. His silence returned, heavy and impenetrable. I wanted to explain, to pour my heart out and tell him that I had been wrong, that I had never stopped loving him, that I would give anything to undo the pain I had caused. But the words caught in my throat, swallowed by the unbearable weight of his indifference. I glanced at him, hoping for a flicker of recognition, of the man who once loved me so fiercely. But his expression remained unreadable, his focus distant. In that moment, I realized that this wasn't just about him forgiving me. It was about whether I could forgive myself. Because even if he found it in his heart to let go of the past, the Chris sitting next to me wasn't the same man I had left behind. And maybe he never would be. The silence between us spoke louder than any words could. It was a wall, insurmountable and unyielding, built brick by brick with my betrayals and his pain. And as much as I wanted to tear it down, I wasn't sure if I could, or if he would ever let me. I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. My chest tightened as I fought to push past the lump in my throat. I had so much to say, so many things I needed him to hear. My heart was screaming 1,000 apologies, 1,000 pleas, but my lips refused to cooperate. I wanted to tell him I was sorry. Truly, deeply sorry. I wanted to tell him that I never meant to hurt him, that my betrayal wasn't about him but about my own brokenness. I wanted to explain that I had spent every single day since he left drowning in regret, that my life had become a hollow shell without him. But all those words, all those confessions, were tangled in my chest, caught in the storm of my guilt and fear. Chris sat there, unmoving, his face unreadable. I felt his silence like a knife to my soul, each second of it carving deeper into the wound. I tried again, taking a shaky breath, my hands trembling in my lap. This was my chance, my only chance to reach him, to undo the damage I had done. "Chris," my voice cracked, and I swallowed hard, my heart pounding in my ears. But the rest of the sentence never came. I was terrified. Terrified of saying the wrong thing, of pushing him further away, of being met with rejection or worse, indifference. The air between us felt thick and suffocating. The weight of everything unsaid pressed down on me, and finally, when I couldn't take it anymore, I blurted out the only words I could manage. "Please, come back." My voice was barely a whisper, trembling with desperation. The words hung in the air, fragile and raw, as if they might shatter under the weight of his silence. I watched him, my heart aching, praying for some sign that he heard me, that he understood the depth of what I was asking. But he didn't move, didn't even look at me. His eyes remained fixed on the horizon, his jaw tight, his hands gripping the edge of the bench. Tears welled in my eyes, and I blinked them away, my chest heaving with the effort to keep myself together. "Please," I repeated, my voice cracking, the word a quiet plea filled with everything I couldn't say. He didn't respond. The silence that followed felt like a final verdict, an unspoken answer to my desperate request. And in that moment, I realized the truth. I had shattered something that couldn't be pieced back together, no matter how much I wanted it. But I stayed there, waiting, hoping, as if my sheer presence might bridge the impossible distance between us. Because even if the love in his eyes was gone, even if he couldn't, or wouldn't, come back, I wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. His words hit me like a thunderclap, each syllable slicing through me with a pain so sharp it left me breathless. "Chris is dead. I am Nemo." For a moment, I couldn't even process what he had said. My Chris, my husband, the man I had loved and hurt, was sitting right there in front of me, but now he was telling me he didn't exist anymore. It was like he was driving the final nail into the coffin of everything we had been, burying it for good. And then he said it, the one thing I had feared most, yet hadn't fully prepared myself to hear. "I want you to sign the divorce papers." My chest tightened, my vision blurred with tears. I felt my heart crack open, raw and exposed, as if I was watching my world crumble into pieces I couldn't hold on to. I wanted to scream, to shake him, to beg him not to do this, but I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. As he continued to speak, each word drove the knife deeper. "You broke my heart, and Teresa filled it with love." My body stiffened as if I had been slapped. Hearing her name from his lips, wrapped in such tenderness, was unbearable. He looked at me then, for the first time, and there was no hatred in his eyes, only resolve, firm and unwavering. He went on, talking about his life now, a life without me. The simplicity of it, the lack of comfort, the challenges, the sacrifices. But then he said something that shattered me all over again. "But I have a woman who loves and respects me when I am a nobody." I bit my lip hard, trying to stop the tears from spilling over, but it was impossible. He wasn't just rejecting me. He was telling me that he had found everything I had failed to give him in someone else. Love, respect, peace. I wanted to argue, to tell him that I could give him all of that now, that I could be better, that I could undo the mistakes I had made. But deep down, I knew I couldn't erase the past, and he wasn't willing to give me the chance to try. "I will never trade this life for what I had and what you destroyed." His words were a final blow, heavy with the weight of truth. The truth that I had taken everything good in our life and thrown it away. The truth that he had found happiness without me. I sat there, trembling, my tears falling freely now. The guilt, the shame, the regret. It was all consuming me, choking me. I wanted to tell him I understood, that I didn't blame him, that I was sorry. So sorry. But the words felt useless, empty. Because no matter how much I apologized, no matter how much I begged, he had made his decision. He wasn't my Chris anymore. He was Nemo, and he was never coming back. I stepped into the house, the one Chris and I had built together. It felt so empty now, echoing with the ghosts of a life that no longer existed. By the time I arrived, the new divorce papers were waiting for me, pristine and clinical. My eyes scanned the terms, but the words blurred as the tears came. He was giving me everything. The house, the money, the cars, all the material things that were supposed to make a person feel secure, successful, even happy. But I didn't feel any of those things. I felt hollow. None of it mattered. Not the luxury, not the comfort. The only thing I wanted was Chris. And I knew, deep in my heart, that he wasn't mine anymore. He wasn't coming back. I sat at the kitchen table, the papers spread out in front of me. My hand trembled as I picked up the pen. I hesitated, my mind racing with memories of us. Our laughter, our dreams, the promises we had made. I had broken those promises, shattered the trust between us, and now this was the consequence. With a deep, shaky breath, I signed my name. It felt like sealing my own fate, like signing away the last connection I had to the love of my life. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in the oversized bed, staring at the ceiling, haunted by the silence. Every creak of the house, every sigh of the wind outside, reminded me of what I had lost. The bed felt impossibly large, cold, and barren without him beside me. Laura came to see me earlier in the evening, her presence a small comfort. But when she left, the silence swallowed me whole. I was alone, truly, painfully alone. I wandered the house aimlessly, running my hands over the polished surfaces of the furniture, the walls. This house, this beautiful house, felt like a prison now. The cars in the garage, the artwork on the walls, the luxurious life we had built. It all mocked me. None of it could fill the gaping hole in my chest. I sank onto the living room floor, clutching a framed photo of Chris and me from happier times. My tears soaked the glass as I traced his smile with trembling fingers. "I'm sorry," I whispered into the emptiness, my voice cracking under the weight of my grief. "I'm so sorry." The loneliness was suffocating. This wasn't the life I wanted, the life I had imagined. I thought I could move on, that I could fix what I had broken, but I couldn't. Chris had found peace, love, and purpose in a new life, one that didn't include me. And here I was, surrounded by wealth, by everything people dream of, yet I had never felt poorer. The one thing I truly wanted, the one thing I needed, was gone. The love of my life was gone, and I had no one to blame but myself. Let's check the story from Chris's side. Seeing Tio again in Belize City was like reconnecting with a piece of my old life, a piece I didn't mind holding on to. He greeted me with his usual bear hug, and for a moment, I was just Chris again. Not the man I had become, not the man I had left behind. "Tio, it's been too long," I said, smiling as he clapped me on the back. "I thought I'd never see you again," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You look different, amigo. Lighter." I chuckled. "I owe you more than I can say. Helping with the divorce, sending that money. You didn't have to do any of it, but you did. Thank you." "Bah," he said, waving a hand as if to dismiss my gratitude. "What are friends for? But this." He turned to Teresa, standing beside me, calm and radiant as ever. "This is what matters. Dr. Teresa Delgado," I said, introducing her with pride. "The woman who saved my life, literally and figuratively." Tio took her hand, his expression softening. "Gracias, doctora, for giving my friend a new life. He needed it more than you know." Teresa smiled, her warmth filling the space around us. "Chris is the one who's found himself. I just gave him a nudge." As we sat down to talk, I shared our news. "Teresa and I are getting married," I said, my heart swelling at the words. "Next month." Tio's grin was wide and genuine. "That's the best news I've heard in a long time. You deserve this, Chris. You deserve happiness." He handed me a small, old-fashioned phone. "Here. It's not much, but you'll need it now, especially for the people who care about you." I laughed. "Thanks, Tio. Guess I'm back in the modern world now." The phone buzzed not long after, and I stared at the unfamiliar number. When I answered, a familiar voice broke through, shaky and full of emotion. "Dad?" It was Laura. Hearing her voice after so long cracked something inside me, a dam holding back emotions I hadn't allowed myself to feel. "Laura," I said, my voice barely steady. "It's good to hear your voice, sweetheart." She was crying. I could hear it, the way her words trembled and caught. "I missed you, Dad. I've missed you so much." I clenched my jaw, trying to hold myself together. "I've missed you too, more than you know." For a few precious minutes, we talked. She told me about her life, about her struggles, and then, inevitably, about her mother. "Dad," she said, her voice breaking, "Mom's a mess. She needs you." I closed my eyes, a sharp pang of pain cutting through me. "Laura," I said, forcing myself to stay calm, "I need you to listen to me. I love you, and I always will. But I can't. I won't go back to that life." "But, no." My voice was firm, though the pain in my chest was unbearable. "We're not talking about your mother, not ever again. Do you understand me?" She sobbed on the other end, and I almost broke. Almost. "I'm sorry, Laura. I wish things were different, but this is how it has to be." We ended the call, and I sat there, staring at the phone. My hands were trembling, my heart aching in a way I hadn't felt in months. Teresa placed a hand on my shoulder, grounding me. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. I nodded, though I wasn't sure if it was true. "I just need a minute." Walking to the edge of the dock, I let the salty breeze wash over me, trying to steady my breathing. Talking to Laura had been both a blessing and a curse. I loved her more than anything, but the mention of Susan, it dragged me back to a place I couldn't afford to go. I wasn't Chris anymore. I wasn't that man. I was Nemo, and I was determined to leave the past where it belonged, buried in the waves. The day of the wedding arrived like a dream, the kind I never thought I'd have again. Standing on the deck of the boat, dressed in a crisp suit that felt both strange and comforting, I gazed out at the open sea. The horizon stretched endlessly, a reminder of the new life I had built, the new man I had become. Nemo, a man who had found love again, not in the shadows of the past, but in the light of something real, something pure. Teresa was radiant. When she stepped onto the makeshift aisle, her dress flowing like sea foam, her smile brighter than the sun, I felt my heart swell with a kind of joy I hadn't thought possible. She was my anchor, my safe harbor. But then my breath caught in my chest as my eyes scanned the small gathering of guests. And there, sitting in the front row, were Rachel and Laura, my daughters. They looked beautiful, my girls. Rachel, so grown up and poised, and Laura, with her soft smile that reminded me of all the good I had once known. My heart ached seeing them, a mix of pride and sadness swirling inside me. And then I saw her, Susan. She sat beside them, quiet and composed, her presence like a ghost of the life I'd left behind. For a moment, I faltered, a wave of memories threatening to crash over me. She had no place here, no claim to this moment. And yet, seeing her with Rachel and Laura, the three of them together, stirred something deep and complicated within me. But then my eyes found Teresa again, standing at the end of the aisle, waiting for me. She was my present, my future. Susan, as much as she had once been my world, was my past. The ceremony began, and I did my best to focus. My vows came from the heart, words spilling out like a prayer of gratitude for Teresa and the love she had given me. When it was her turn, her words wrapped around me like a warm embrace, steadying me. And then came the kiss. When our lips met, it was like the world disappeared. There was no Susan, no Rachel or Laura, no lingering pain from the life I'd left behind. There was only Teresa and me, bound together by a love forged in the fires of loss and healing. We were married. As the guests clapped and cheered, I found my gaze drifting back to the front row. Rachel and Laura were smiling, clapping with everyone else. Susan, though, sat quietly, her expression unreadable. I didn't approach her, not then. The weight of her presence was too much, and this day wasn't about her. It was about Teresa and me, about the life we were building together. Still, as Teresa and I walked hand in hand down the aisle, I couldn't shake the feeling that seeing my daughters there, and even Susan, was a door creaking open. A door I thought I had slammed shut. And as much as I wanted to keep it closed, I couldn't ignore the part of me that wondered if it was time to face what lay on the other side. But not today. Today belonged to us. To Teresa and me. To a love reborn on the open sea, with nothing but the horizon ahead. The party was alive with laughter and music, the celebration of a new beginning for Teresa and me. Dancing with her under the soft glow of the lights, I felt a rare and overwhelming contentment. She was my wife now, my partner, my love, my safe place. As we swayed to the rhythm, I caught a glimpse of Susan moving through the crowd. She approached cautiously, her posture tentative, her face a mixture of courage and vulnerability. Teresa noticed too, and when Susan stopped a few feet away, she smiled graciously at her. "Can I ask for a dance with your husband?" Susan's voice was quiet but clear. Teresa looked at me, her eyes searching mine for a sign. I nodded subtly, and with that, she smiled at Susan. "Of course." Teresa pressed a gentle kiss to my cheek before stepping aside, leaving me with my past. As Susan and I moved into the dance, a slower song began to play. Her hands trembled slightly as they found mine, and I couldn't help but notice how much smaller and more fragile she seemed now. Her eyes glistened, tears threatening to spill as she whispered, "I'm not here to steal you, Chris. I just came to see you smile, and to see you happy." Her words hit me in a way I didn't expect. There was no manipulation, no bitterness, just raw honesty. For the first time in a long while, I saw her as the woman I had once loved, not the one who had hurt me. When she looked at me again, her lips trembled into a smile. "Can we dance to a faster song?" she asked, a glimmer of her old spirit surfacing. "This will be my last dance, and I want to have it with you." I hesitated for a moment, the weight of what she was saying settling into me. But then I nodded, and when the tempo shifted, we moved together, faster now, laughing softly at the awkwardness of it all. It wasn't the dance of two people in love. It was the dance of two people finding closure. When the music faded and the night began to wind down, Susan stepped back, her hands falling from mine. Her tears were gone, replaced by a quiet resignation that struck me more deeply than any words could. The party ended, and Teresa and I made our way to our room, the door closing on the noise and the memories left behind. She kissed me softly, her hands cupping my face, grounding me once more. But as we drifted into our new life together, I couldn't help but think of Susan. She stood alone on the beach as the sun dipped below the horizon. Her Her silhouette against the fading light was a portrait of solitude and strength, the ocean breeze tugging at her dress. The sun was going down for her, as she had said, but I hoped she would find peace in the new day waiting for her tomorrow. A day where she could start to let go, as I had. The world kept turning, the waves kept rolling, and somewhere on that quiet shore, Susan stood still, watching the past fade into the sea. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.